They arrested her like she was nobody. The next day, she was the judge deciding their fate. The only thing Danielle Monroe wanted was to stretch her legs and call her dad. That's it. She had been driving for nearly 4 hours straight, left Washington around noon, and now, somewhere near Lumberton, North Carolina, she pulled into a nearly empty rest stop tucked off I-95. One of those places with 3 vending machines, 2 aging picnic tables, and the constant hum of cars rolling past. She stepped out, phone in hand, and walked toward a shaded bench, just far enough away from the parked cars. "Hey, Daddy," she said with a small smile, pressing the phone to her ear. "I'm about an hour and a half away, give or take. You need anything before I get there?" They chatted, nothing urgent. Her dad just wanted to see her. She was relaxed, wore a navy blue tee, black joggers, and white sneakers. No makeup, no jewelry. Her locks were pulled back into a bun. Just a woman in her late 30s making a pit stop on her way to see family. But then, tires crunched the gravel behind her. 2 officers, 1 man and 1 woman, stepped out of a white sheriff's cruiser. Neither smiled. The man adjusted his belt like he had something to prove. Danielle ended her call, already sensing the shift in energy. She slid her phone into her back pocket and turned toward them calmly. "You need something, officer?" she asked. The woman, blonde, sharp-featured, mid-30s, tilted her head. "We got a call about someone loitering near the vending area. You matched the description." Danielle blinked. "I'm sitting on a bench, making a phone call." "ID, please." She let out a slow breath. "On what grounds? I'm not doing anything wrong." The male officer, broad shoulders, red in the face, took a step closer. His name tag read Dempsey. "You refusing to comply?" Danielle didn't flinch. "No, sir. I'm asking a lawful question. You haven't explained what law I've violated." That was the moment the woman, Boone, put her hand on her taser, not drawing it, not yet, just enough to let Danielle know the rules of this game were already rigged. Danielle's fingers twitched. She reached into her small crossbody bag and slowly pulled out her wallet, keeping everything visible. "This is my driver's license and my bar card. You're welcome to take a look." Dempsey snatched it, barely glancing at the credentials. "What's a DC judge doing down here?" So he had seen it. "I'm visiting my father," she answered evenly, "and I'd appreciate my documents back." Boone walked around her slowly, inspecting her like she was waiting for Danielle to blink wrong. "Where's your vehicle?" "Right there," Danielle nodded toward her black Mazda, parked in a clearly marked spot. "Step over here," Dempsey said, already reaching for his cuffs. "What's the charge?" He didn't answer. Danielle's voice sharpened. "Are you seriously detaining me because I made a phone call while black at a rest stop?" Boone cut in. "Don't pull that card. You're making this worse for yourself." Danielle raised both hands. "Everything I've done has been legal. You have no right." Click. The cuffs were on her wrists before she could finish her sentence. A man across the lot pulled out his phone. She saw the lens rise, the red dot blink. Someone was filming. Good. They walked her toward the cruiser as though she were a shoplifter. Boone opened the back door. Dempsey guided her head down, too hard. As the door slammed shut beside her, Danielle stared out the window. A highway sign zipped past. Fayetteville, 27 miles. Her father would be wondering why she hadn't called back. Her phone was still in her back pocket. She closed her eyes. There was no panic, no yelling. She didn't cry. She just sat there in the back of a police car, hands bound behind her, with the cold steel of injustice pressed firm against her skin. But what the officers didn't know was that this was only the beginning. 12 hours earlier, Danielle Monroe was sipping coffee on her porch in Southeast DC, flipping through her case notes for the week ahead. Her calendar was stacked. 3 hearings, 2 mediation conferences, and a chambers meeting with the state disciplinary board. She had barely come up for air since her appointment to the bench 4 months ago, but today wasn't about work. Today, she was going home. Not permanently, just for the weekend. Her father, Melvin Monroe, had been having some dizzy spells. Nothing serious, he claimed, just getting old. But Danielle knew better. He'd skip appointments, ignore symptoms, and swear up and down that he was fine if it meant staying out of the hospital. She'd planned the trip quietly. No driver, no press, no staff. Just her, the road, and her music. Danielle tossed her overnight bag into the trunk of her car just after 11 a.m. She wore what she always wore on road trips, comfortable clothes and no courtroom polish. No one ever recognized her without the robe, and even if they did, she wasn't the type to make a scene of her own status. That's what she liked about the drive. Nobody bothering her. Just the hum of her engine, the trees blurring past, and the rare peace that came from being alone with your thoughts. The highway gave her space to breathe. She passed green exit signs and forgotten exits. She laughed at her father's last voicemail telling her to bring him some real coffee, not that garbage from the machine. Her dad had always been like that, sharp, stubborn, and full of pride. A retired high school principal, well known around his neighborhood in Florence, South Carolina. Back when Danielle was just starting law school, he used to mail her clippings of local civil rights cases with handwritten notes like, "Look how they tried to bury this one," or "You better fix things like this when you graduate." That kind of pressure could have broken a weaker kid, but for Danielle, it just made her grind harder. She had spent over a decade defending cases most people wouldn't touch: wrongful arrests, housing discrimination, police brutality. She wasn't afraid of hard fights. That's what made her appointment to the bench so meaningful, not just because she made it, but because she earned it. When she passed the Florence exit sign, she was only 2 hours out. She didn't want to arrive too early. Her dad liked his afternoon naps, and the last thing she wanted was to wake him up mid-snore. So she figured she'd stop, stretch, maybe grab a soda, just a little break before the final leg. She turned off the main highway around exit 163, near a wooded rest area outside a town called Hope Mills. No traffic, barely a soul in sight. She pulled into a parking spot, left the engine off, and stepped into the heavy August heat. Sweat touched the back of her neck within seconds. She grabbed her phone, dialed her dad, and walked toward the shaded benches. "Hey, Daddy," she said when he picked up. "Just wanted to say I'm close. You still want that coffee?" His voice cracked through the line. "You know I do. Bring that dark roast from the Arabica shop." She smiled. "You mean the one that's 20 minutes in the wrong direction?" "Don't sass me, girl. I got a sensitive palate." She chuckled, looking out at the long, empty road beyond the trees. He started talking about his garden, how the tomatoes were coming in late, how the rabbits kept chewing his lettuce. Normal things, simple things. Danielle didn't notice the white cruiser pulling in behind her until it was too late. But that phone call? That would end up being the last peaceful moment of her day. Danielle was mid-sentence when she noticed the cruiser roll in. It didn't seem urgent at first. No sirens, no lights, just a slow crawl through the lot, like they were checking something. She glanced up briefly and kept talking. "Yeah, Daddy, I'll bring the coffee, but you better make it last this time. Last time you had that thing gone in 2 days. She turned away from the car and smiled, but the cruiser came to a stop behind her anyway. Driver's side door opened first. Big guy, maybe mid-40s, with a sun-reddened neck and mirrored sunglasses. The female officer stepped out from the passenger side, thin build, tighter expression. Neither of them looked friendly. Danielle's smile faded. "Hey," she said gently into the phone. "I'll call you back in a minute." She didn't hang up, just lowered the phone a little, hoping her dad might hear what was going on. The male officer was already walking toward her, hand hovering near his belt. The other one followed, arms crossed, scanning her up and down. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked, tone clipped. He didn't introduce himself. "I'm fine," she said carefully. "Just stretching my legs." He nodded toward the picnic benches. "We got a call about someone loitering." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "Is sitting at a rest stop bench now considered loitering?" The woman spoke this time. "You matched the description." Danielle's jaw locked. "Description of who exactly?" "Someone acting suspicious, pacing near the vending machines," the man said. "You got ID on you?" She didn't move. "Acting suspicious how?" "Are you refusing to identify yourself?" he asked. Danielle stayed still, calm. "No, I'm asking a legal question. You haven't told me what crime I've committed." He took a step forward. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." Boone, still silent, shifted her hand closer to her taser. Danielle slowly reached for her bag. "My name is Judge Danielle Monroe. Here's my driver's license. Here's my bar ID. Both are valid. You have no legal basis to detain me." Dempsey snatched both cards from her hand and glanced at them for a half second. "Judge, huh?" he muttered. "Well, congratulations." Boone paced behind her, circling like a hawk. "You traveling alone?" she asked. "Yes," Danielle answered, "and I'm parked right over there." She pointed to her car. Perfectly within the lines, nothing suspicious, nothing wrong. Dempsey still held her ID. "I'd like my property returned," she said, but neither officer moved. Boone now stood behind her, a little too close. Danielle's voice stayed measured. "I've complied. I've answered. If there's nothing else, I'd like to be left alone." Boone's voice snapped back. "Ma'am, don't raise your voice." "I haven't raised my voice," Danielle replied. Dempsey, still staring at her ID, finally handed it back, but then grabbed her wrist before she could even put it away. "Turn around." Danielle looked him dead in the eyes. "Am I being detained?" "You're resisting a lawful order." "I've resisted nothing. I'm not under arrest." But it didn't matter. His hand tightened. Boone grabbed her other arm. Danielle didn't fight. She didn't scream. She said, calmly, to no one in particular, "This is an unlawful detainment, and I am stating that for the record." A man standing by the soda machine pulled out his phone. Boone noticed and looked his way. "Sir, keep moving," she barked. But he didn't. He kept recording. Click. The cuffs snapped into place. She was walked across the lot like a criminal, 2 officers on either side, tight grips on her arms. Boone opened the back door. Dempsey guided her head down a little too forcefully. Danielle slid into the back seat without resistance. She stared out at the picnic table where she had been only minutes ago, listening to her dad talk about tomatoes. Her hands rested awkwardly in the cuffs, pressing into her spine. No one said anything. No Miranda rights. No explanation. The engine started. They didn't know who she was, or maybe they didn't care, but Danielle wasn't the kind of woman to let something like this disappear quietly. The drive to the precinct was short, but it felt longer than it should have. Danielle sat in the back seat, silent. Her wrists were starting to go numb. The metal bit into her skin every time they hit a bump in the road. No one spoke to her. No one read her rights. Dempsey had the same dead stare in the rearview mirror the entire ride. Boone sat with her arms crossed, looking satisfied. The car finally rolled into a squat, cinderblock building with Bladen County Sheriff's Office painted in chipped letters over the front. It looked like it hadn't been updated in decades. Danielle was walked in like a suspect, not escorted, dragged, still cuffed, still silent. The few people inside, deputies, 1 young clerk, watched with wide eyes. No one recognized her yet. They took her to a holding area, not a cell, just a bench against the wall with chipped paint and a buzzing overhead light. Dempsey leaned against the doorframe. Boone stood off to the side, flipping through a tablet. "You want to tell us what you were really doing out there?" Dempsey asked. Danielle looked him straight in the face. "Calling my father, resting during a legal road trip, sitting on a public bench. Do you have any further legal questions, or are we done?" Boone made a face. "You got a smart mouth for someone in cuffs." Danielle didn't blink. "I know my rights, which is more than I can say for either of you." Silence. Boone turned toward Dempsey. "She's trying to bait us." Dempsey shrugged. "Let her." That's when the door creaked open and someone new stepped in. A deputy, younger, maybe late 20s, black, tall, with a neat mustache and a hint of hesitation in his voice. "Hey, what's she in for?" he asked, flipping through a clipboard. Dempsey waved him off. "Loitering, non-compliance. We'll figure it out." The deputy squinted at Danielle. "Wait, is your name Monroe?" Danielle nodded once. "Yes." His eyebrows jumped. "Judge Monroe?" Now Dempsey looked up. Danielle didn't say a word. The deputy stepped back like someone had just smacked him in the chest. "Man, you're the one who spoke at the regional bar summit last month, right? My cousin was there, said you tore that room up." Dempsey looked like he'd swallowed something sour. Boone folded her arms tighter. The deputy turned to Dempsey. "You didn't know who she was?" Dempsey grunted. "Doesn't matter who she is." "It kinda does," the deputy replied, quieter now. Danielle sat up straighter. "So, am I being charged?" No answer. She leaned forward. "Am I under arrest?" More silence. "Then uncuff me, now." The deputy looked between them, unsure. "I'll take it up the chain," Dempsey muttered, but he walked away. Boone hesitated, then followed him out without another word. The younger deputy stepped forward, unsure. "Ma'am, would you like some water?" Danielle looked at him. She wasn't angry at him. Not exactly. She just nodded. "Yes, thank you." He returned a moment later with a paper cup, then quietly unlocked her cuffs. Her wrists were red and bruised. He looked at them and winced. Sorry about that. I didn't know. Danielle took the water, sipped once, and said, You should always know. He didn't respond. She sat for another 30 minutes before someone finally told her she was free to go. No charges filed, no apology, no record, just gone. She walked out of the station alone. Her car had been brought around the side. She climbed in, closed the door, checked her phone, 4 missed calls from her father, and 1 text from an unknown number. I got everything on video. I can send it if you want. But Danielle didn't respond right away. Not yet. Something bigger was coming. By the time Danielle made it to her father's house, the video had already made it to TikTok. It was just under 2 minutes long, shaky, shot from a distance, but clear enough. You could see her calmly handing over her ID. You could hear her voice, controlled, professional, asking why she was being stopped. And you could see the cuffs go on anyway. She saw it for the first time sitting at her father's kitchen table, her laptop open, her wrists still sore. The man who filmed it, some kid traveling with his girlfriend, had captioned it. They arrested a black woman for sitting. No yelling, no threat. Just this. It already had 180,000 views by 6 p.m. By 10 p.m., it had crossed 1 million. Someone in the comments said, She kept saying she was a judge. They didn't even blink. Another, Imagine doing this to a sitting judge. Imagine what they do to people without power. Danielle didn't post anything. She didn't write a thread, didn't call a press conference. She just watched it happen. Within 24 hours, her name was trending in legal circles. By 48, the story had hit national headlines. CNN wanted a statement. So did the Washington Post. People were angry, but not surprised. That was the saddest part. No one was shocked. Just furious that even someone like her, law degree, judge, no criminal record, could be treated like nothing at a rest stop in the middle of the day. And still, she said nothing. Her phone blew up with calls from former colleagues, professors, even a few state reps who wanted her to sue. Civil rights attorneys offered pro bono work. Local organizers were tagging her in posts, demanding the sheriff resign. She answered no one. She just sat in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling fan, thinking. Not about revenge, not even about justice, really. About what restraint looks like in a world that doesn't always deserve it. Her dad knocked on the door just before midnight. You want me to say anything? He asked. Danielle shook her head. I'm good. He stepped inside and handed her a folded sheet of paper. I wrote this when you passed the bar. Found it while cleaning your closet. Thought you might want it now. She unfolded it. It was short. 1 paragraph, typed. She remembered reading it once, years ago. Remember, baby girl, knowing the law is only half the battle. The other half is keeping your dignity when somebody tries to take it from you. She closed her eyes for a moment, then tucked it in her bag. Thank you, she said. Her dad nodded. They don't know who they messed with. I don't need them to know, Danielle replied. They'll find out on their own. She wasn't talking about revenge. She was talking about the calendar. Because Monday morning, she had a hearing. And guess which 2 officers were scheduled to appear in front of her, not as witnesses, not as law enforcement, but as defendants in a long overdue misconduct review tied to use of force complaints in their department. Sergeant Kyle Dempsey, Officer Morgan Boone. They didn't recognize her name on the docket, but they would recognize her face, and they wouldn't be able to look away. Monday morning, 9:27 a.m. The courtroom was quiet except for the steady shuffle of attorneys settling in and the soft murmurs of clerks organizing files. Sunlight crept through the tall windows of Courtroom B inside the Bladen County Judicial Center. A hearing was scheduled at 9:30 sharp. Just another case on the docket. Nothing unusual, at least on paper. 2 officers, accused of excessive force and procedural misconduct, were expected to appear before the presiding judge for an internal review ordered by the State Oversight Committee. Routine, except for the mounting pile of complaints against them. One of them was Sergeant Kyle Dempsey. The other, Officer Morgan Boone. They strolled in together, calm, uniforms neat, posture stiff with confidence. Dempsey chatted casually with their union rep. Boone kept her eyes forward. They didn't even glance toward the judge's bench. Not yet. At 9:29, the bailiff stepped into the room. All rise, he called. Every head turned. Feet shuffled. Conversation stopped. Then the door behind the bench opened, and Judge Danielle Monroe stepped out in her robe, her expression unreadable. And suddenly, everything changed. Dempsey blinked hard. Boone tilted her head slightly, like her brain couldn't process what her eyes were seeing. The courtroom air went dense. Danielle placed her folder neatly on the bench, looked over the rim of her glasses, and locked eyes with Dempsey, then Boone. No smile, no smirk, just the face of a woman who had been dismissed, cuffed, ignored, and was now the one holding the gavel. She adjusted her seat and spoke clearly. Good morning. This hearing concerns pending allegations of misconduct against Sergeant Dempsey and Officer Boone. All parties are present and sworn. We'll begin. No dramatic pause, no speech, just business. Boone shifted in her chair, suddenly fidgeting with a pen that had no cap. Dempsey sat straighter, trying to find something in the paperwork to stare at. Their attorney, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a 3-ring binder, stood to speak. Your Honor, if I may request a brief continuance, given that... Danielle raised one hand. Request denied. You've had 3 weeks' notice. We're proceeding. He cleared his throat. Understood. She opened the first folder in front of her. Let's start with the body cam discrepancy in the Green case. Sergeant Dempsey, the footage cuts out at the most critical moment. Would you like to explain why? Dempsey straightened his tie. Technical malfunction, Your Honor. Danielle nodded. Interesting, because the report says the camera was turned off manually. Silence. Was that another malfunction? His jaw clenched. I don't recall, ma'am. Judge Monroe, she corrected him flatly. He swallowed. Judge Monroe. She flipped to the next page. And in the Ellis complaint, Officer Boone, you reported the suspect refused to comply, yet the video shows no such refusal. The suspect was handcuffed within 10 seconds of your approach. Boone glanced at her lawyer. Do you have an answer? Danielle asked. I followed protocol, Boone said. Danielle looked her dead in the eyes. That's not what the footage shows. In fact, what it shows is you drawing a taser on an unarmed man who asked for clarification. You repeated the same phrase you used last Thursday. Boone looked up. Danielle didn't blink. You told me I was making it worse for myself. Is that what you say when someone asks a lawful question? Boone's lips parted, but nothing came out. Danielle leaned back, calm as ever. I reviewed every complaint against both of you. You've created a pattern. Escalate first, explain later. You act first, report second. And when you're challenged, you either turn off the camera or forget. The courtroom was silent. Dempsey's lawyer stood again. Judge Monroe, with all due respect, I'm not sure it's appropriate for you to... Danielle cut in, sharp but measured. You're not sure what, counselor? That it's appropriate for a judge to hold officers accountable for abusing power? Or are you concerned that the officers finally have to answer to someone they can't intimidate? No one moved. She continued, voice level. You see, what your clients didn't know is that I remember everything. Every word, every move. The way Officer Boone reached for her taser when I asked a question. The way Sergeant Dempsey smirked while he clicked the cuffs too tight. The way neither of them thought they'd ever have to answer for it. Danielle paused, then exhaled. But this hearing isn't about me. It's about every person who's ever been silenced, disrespected, or detained without cause. I just happened to be the one who lived to see both sides of that door. Boone looked like she wanted to disappear. Dempsey didn't speak again. Danielle turned to the committee clerk. Please record the following. Based on the evidence reviewed, including officer history, witness testimony, and multiple confirmed video recordings, I am referring both officers to the State Review Board for disciplinary action, including potential suspension and loss of certification. The clerk nodded, typing quickly. Danielle looked down at the defense table one last time. This courtroom doesn't run on power. It runs on truth, and truth doesn't care about a badge. Gavel struck. But this wasn't revenge. It was accountability. And it had only just begun.